Blue Velvet was the elegant nightmare everyone remembers: a severed ear, a gas mask, a vanished child, a death no one solved. Behind its beauty came addiction, heartbreak, illness, and actors lost too soon. Keep watching, because the real darkness was waiting after the credits. Dennis Hopper as Frank Booth. Dennis Hopper did not simply play Frank Booth, he seemed to drag him out of some locked room inside American cinema. By the time Blue Velvet reached theaters in 1986, Hopper was about 50, famous for Easy Rider, feared for the chaos that had nearly swallowed his career. Frank was the film's nightmare in human form, a gangster dealer, abuser, and volcanic predator whose gas mask eruptions and childish rage made suburban evil feel alive. Born Dennis Lee Hopper on May 17, 1936 in Dodge City, Kansas, he grew up with art, acting, rebellion, and restlessness already pulling at him. As a teenager, he moved toward theater in San Diego, later studying at the Actors Studio, chasing film with the hunger of someone who never wanted a safe life. Early promise came with James Dean and Hollywood youth culture. But Easy Rider turns him into a counterculture icon, and then success became a trap. The 1970s and early 1980s brought addiction, broken relationships, and professional exile until rehab helped him return. The strange wow detail is that Hopper reportedly pushed for Frank with unsettling certainty he wanted the part because he felt he understood the monster. He also suggested amyl nitrate instead of the original gas, deepening Frank's ritual. Blue Velvet and Hoosiers arrived in the same comeback year, and Hoosiers earned him an Oscar nomination, proving the industry had not finished with him. Afterward came speed art photography, 5 marriages, and a public image that never fully separated genius from self-destruction. Hopper died on May 29, 2010 at 74 from prostate cancer. By 2026, his future is no longer a career, but a legacy: restless, dangerous, unforgettable. Frank Booth was the monster. Dennis Hopper was the man who survived long enough to make him immortal. Isabella Rossellini as Dorothy Vallens. After Blue Velvet, Isabella Rossellini did not simply walk away from Dorothy Vallens. She carried the argument Dorothy created. The role had made her unforgettable. A nightclub singer bruised by violence, desire, fear, and motherhood, but it also placed her at the center of one of the film's most painful debates. Some viewers saw Dorothy as a raw portrait of an abused woman. Others believed the film had pushed Isabella too far. Roger Ebert's famous criticism claimed David Lynch had degraded and exploited her, a judgment. Rossellini later answered with calm force she was an adult. She chose the role, and she understood the darkness she was entering. But the drama did not end when the cameras stopped. Blue Velvet also connected her emotionally to David Lynch, and their relationship became one of Hollywood's strangest and most intensely watched romances. They were not simply director and actress anymore. They were two artists bound by a film about obsession, fear, and hidden wounds. When the relationship ended, the private pain was severe. Rossellini later admitted the breakup with Lynch hurt her deeply enough that she sought therapy, a rare confession from a woman who usually protected her personal life with elegance and restraint. Then came another kind of rejection, not romantic, but public. In the 1990s, after years as one of the most recognizable faces of Lange, Rossellini was dropped by the beauty brand as she entered her 40s, widely framed as a case of ageism in an industry that celebrated her face until it decided that same face was no longer useful. Years later, Lange brought her back in her 60s, turning what had once looked like humiliation into a quiet, poetic reversal. Her love life brought more heartbreak as well. After Lynch, her relationship with Gary Oldman also ended painfully. The Guardian later described how their planned wedding collapsed after he entered rehab and fell in love with someone else. Yet Rossellini did not harden into bitterness. She moved toward independence, animal science writing, and a farm life that looked nothing like Hollywood mythology. By 2026, Isabella Rossellini stands as something rarer than a survivor of scandal. She is a woman who was judged abandoned, aged out, and underestimated, then returned with intelligence, humor, and grace. Dorothy Vallens was trapped in the dark, but Isabella Rossellini learned how to leave the room. Before the darkness deepens, comment your most shocking memory. Then continue with Legends of Classic into the next fate. Kyle MacLachlan as Jeffrey Beaumont. Kyle MacLachlan entered Blue Velvet as the clean-cut boy next door, then slowly became the audience's guilty conscience. As Jeffrey Beaumont, he was curious, polite, and almost too innocent until one severed ear pulled him beneath the white fences and songbirds of Lumberton into a world of violence, desire, and fear. Jeffrey did not fight darkness from a distance. Darkness Some man stared at it, followed it, and discovered part of it inside himself. Born Kyle Merritt MacLachlan on February the 22nd, 1959 in Yakima, Washington, he grew up far from Hollywood mythology. His mother Catherine encouraged theatre and community arts, while his father Kent worked in law and finance. Acting began not as fame, but as disciplined school plays, University of Washington training Shakespeare and regional theatre. Then David Lynch found him for Dune, turning a young stage actor into Paul Atreides before bringing him back for something far more intimate and dangerous. The painful irony behind Blue Velvet was that MacLachlan's mother was dying of ovarian cancer during this period and reportedly objected to the film's violence and sexual darkness. He initially hesitated, then returned to the role. In 1986, the same year Blue Velvet arrived, she died at only 52. Behind Jeffrey's boyish face was a young man entering success while already learning loss. After the film, MacLachlan became one of Lynch's defining collaborators, immortalized again as Agent Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. He dated Laura Dern after Blue Velvet, later Lara Flynn Boyle, then built a steadier private life with Desiree Gruber, whom he married in 2002. By 2026, at 67, he remains active, respected, and freshly visible through Fallout. Jeffrey Beaumont looked into the darkness and survived. Kyle MacLachlan spent a lifetime turning that innocence into art. Laura Dern as Sandy Williams. Laura Dern entered Blue Velvet as the light in a room that was already beginning to rot. As Sandy Williams, she was the detective's daughter with a soft voice, a clean sweater, and a terrifying awareness that innocence could stand only inches away from evil. She gave Jeffrey Beaumont clues, tenderness, and a moral horizon, becoming the girl who made Lumberton feel worth saving. Born on February 10, 1967, Dern grew up inside Hollywood, but not comfortably outside its wounds. She was the daughter of actors Diane Ladd and Bruce Dern. After her parents divorced when she was very young, she was largely raised by her mother and grandmother. Acting came early through film sets and small roles, but the famous surname did not protect her from pressure. The strange wow moment came when she left UCLA after only 2 days to make Blue Velvet. She later recalled being told she would no longer be welcome if she chose the film over school. The choice changed everything. At 19, Dern became Lynch's vision of American innocence, then followed him into Wild at Heart. Her relationship with Kyle MacLachlan, which began around the Blue Velvet period, eventually ended, and later life brought a public divorce from musician Ben Harper. But her career kept expanding. Jurassic Park made her globally recognizable. Big Little Lies brought Emmy-winning prestige, and Marriage Story gave her the Oscar that confirmed what Lynch had seen decades earlier. By 2026, Dern is 59, still active, still fearless, and recently moving into another high-profile chapter with The White Lotus Season 4. Her mother, Diane Ladd, died in 2025, adding quiet grief to a life built around art, family, and survival. Sandy Williams believed in Robin's After the Darkness. Laura Dern became proof that light could grow sharper with age. Dean Stockwell as Ben. Dean Stockwell appears in Blue Velvet for only a short stretch, but Ben feels like a door opening into a room no one should enter. Dressed in pale elegance, lips touched with makeup, he does not attack like Frank Booth. He performs. His silent lip sync to Roy Orbison's In Dreams turns the scene into something hypnotic, absurd and frightening, a nightmare staged like a private cabaret. Born Robert Dean Stockwell on March 5, 1936 in North Hollywood, he entered the industry before childhood could fully belong to him. Under contract at MGM, he became a child star in films like Anchors Aweigh, Gentleman's Agreement, The Boy with Green Hair and The Secret Garden. His father, Harry Stockwell, was also a performer. And Hollywood arrived not as a dream, but almost as family inheritance. Yet that early fame carried a cost. Stockwell's life became a long movement between visibility and disappearance, between acclaim and retreat. By the time David Lynch cast him as Ben, Stockwell had already lived several acting lives. He had been a studio child, a serious young performer, a counterculture figure, and a man who repeatedly drifted away from the machine. Then Blue Velvet gave him one unforgettable scene, and soon after Married to the Mob brought him an Oscar nomination. Quantum Leap made him beloved to a new generation as Al Calavici, the charming hologram with a wounded heart. He later stepped back again, focusing more on art and private life. Stockwell died of natural causes on November 7, 2021, at 85. By 2026, Ben remains one of his strangest gifts to cinema, a few minutes of screen time that still feels impossible to forget. Brad Dourif as Raymond. Brad Dourif barely needed the center of the frame to make Blue Velvet feel more dangerous. As Raymond, one of Frank Booth's men, he moved through David Lynch's nightmare like a strange electrical current, quiet, watchful, unstable. He was not the monster in charge, but his presence helped make Frank's world feel crowded with people who had already crossed lines normal men would fear. IMDb and Apple TV list Dourif's Blue Velvet role as Raymond. Born Bradford. Claude Dourif, on March 18, 1950, in Huntington, West Virginia, he grew up with loss early. His father died when he was only 3, and his mother's connection to community theatre helped pull him toward performance. Dourif later left school behind for acting, studying seriously in New York before Miloš Forman changed his life with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. His Billy Bibbit was fragile, stammering, heartbreaking, and it brought him an Oscar nomination, a Golden Globe, and a BAFTA. But that gift became a shadow. After Billy Hollywood often saw Dourif as the man for damaged souls killers, loners, and voices from the edge. June Blue Velvet, The Exorcist, 3 Child's Play, and later Grimmer Wormtongue in The Lord of the Rings turned him into a cult legend, but also trapped him inside the industry's fascination with his intensity. Chucky became his most famous creation funny, vicious and impossible to separate from that unmistakable voice. By 2026, Dourif is 76 and largely retired except for Chucky and rare work connected to his daughter Fiona, including The Pit. He now lives more quietly remembered not as a conventional star, but as one of cinema's great unsettling presences. Raymond was a small role, but Brad Dourif built a lifetime out of making small shadows feel alive. Jack Nance as Paul. Jack Nance made even the edges of Blue Velvet feel nervous. As Paul, one of Frank Booth's strange orbiting men, he was not the loudest threat in the room, but he belonged to that Lynchian world where a glance, a pause, or an awkward movement could feel as dangerous as a scream. IMDb and TV Guide list, Nance as Paul in the film's cast. A small role that still carries weight because of the actor behind it. Born Marvin John Nance on December 21, 1943 in Boston, he grew up in Dallas, Texas, far from the surreal nightmare that would later define him. Acting pulled him through theatre before David Lynch changed his life forever with Eraserhead. As Henry Spencer Nance became the face of underground cinema's strangest anxiety, wide-eyed, trapped and unforgettable. From there, he became one of Lynch's most loyal collaborators, appearing in June Blue Velvet Wild, At Heart Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, and Lost Highway. But behind the cult status was a fragile life. Nance struggled for years with alcoholism, and his personal world carried deep wounds. His marriage to Catherine E. Coulson, later beloved as the Log Lady in Twin Peaks, ended in divorce. His second wife, Kelly Jean Van Dyke, died by suicide in 1991, a tragedy that followed him into the final years of his life. Then came the ending that still feels almost too dark for fiction. In December 1996, after an altercation outside of Winchell's Donuts in South Pasadena, Nance went home with a head injury. He was later found dead on his bathroom floor. His death was linked to a subdural hematoma caused by blunt force trauma. By 2026, Jack Nance remains a ghostly presence in Lynch's universe. Never a conventional star, but impossible to erase. Hope Lange as Mrs. Williams. Hope Lange brought something quietly unsettling to Blue Velvet, the warmth of old Hollywood placed inside a town where innocence was already cracking. As Mrs. Williams Sandy's mother and Detective Williams's wife, she seemed gentle, composed, almost untouched by the darkness moving through Lumberton. That was the point. Her presence helped David Lynch make the family home feel safe enough for the nightmare outside to become even more disturbing. Born Hope Elise Ross. Lange on November 28, 1933 in Redding, Connecticut, she came from an artistic family. Her father worked in music, her mother had been an actress. And after her father died when Hope was still a child, the family moved deeper into New York's creative world. She began performing young studied dance and grew into the kind of blonde. Intelligent screen presence Hollywood loved in the 1950s. Peyton Place brought her an Academy Award nomination, and The Ghost and Mrs. Muir later gave her 2 Emmy wins. By the time she appeared in Blue Velvet, Lange was no longer the ingenue. She was carrying decades of cinema history into a film that deliberately twisted the idea of American normality. Her own life had known its share of private fracture, 3 marriages, 2 divorces, children, reinvention, and the slow narrowing of roles that came for many actresses of her generation. After Blue Velvet, her appearances became more selective. Health eventually forced a quieter chapter. She survived surgery for a brain tumor in the 1990s, then retired from acting in 1998. Lange died on December 19, 2003 in Santa Monica at 70 after an infection caused by ischemic colitis. By 2026, Hope Lange remains a soft echo of classic Hollywood graceful wounded, and remembered for the calm she brought to stories filled with storms. George Dickerson as Detective John Williams. George Dickerson gave Blue Velvet one of its quietest forms of protection, the face of law in a town where law could barely see the darkness underneath. As Detective John Williams Sandy's father, he was controlled, formal, and reassuring, a man who listened when Jeffrey Beaumont brought him the severed ear, yet could not fully stop the nightmare already spreading through Lumberton. His role was not loud, but it mattered. He made the world feel real enough for David Lynch's dream to become more frightening. Born George Graff Dickerson Jr. on July 25, 1933 in Topeka, Kansas, he did not begin as a Hollywood actor chasing a spotlight. He was first a writer, poet, editor, and literary man working in publishing and journalism before performance became a later chapter. He studied at Yale, served briefly in the US Army, and spent years around literature before writer's block and life experience pushed him toward acting. That history gave his screen presence a different weight. He looked less like someone pretending to know authority and more like a man who had watched institutions from the inside. Before and after Blue Velvet, Dickerson built a steady career as a character actor, appearing in Hill Street Blues, Psycho 2 Death Warrant, and After Dark My Sweet. Off-screen, his life was complicated: 4 marriages, 5 children, and a family spread across different relationships, including his son, Dome Karakowski, who later became a respected Finnish filmmaker. January 10th, 2015, at 81, after a long illness surrounded by loved ones, according to reports quoting his son. By 2026, he remains a remembered supporting presence, not a star built for posters, but the kind of actor who made strange worlds believable. Priscilla Pointer as Mrs. Beaumont. Priscilla Pointer brought a century of quiet theatrical grace into the fragile home of Blue Velvet. As Mrs. Beaumont Jeffrey's mother, she stood at the edge of the story's terror, a worried wife after her husband's sudden collapse, a mother watching normal life tremble, and a reminder that even the safest suburban rooms could not keep darkness outside forever. Born Priscilla Marie Pointer on May 18, 1924 in New York City, she came from an artistic family and built her life first on the stage. Long before audiences recognized her from film and television, she helped shape American theater itself, co-founding the San Francisco Actors Workshop with her husband Jules Irving. That company became a serious force in American performance, and Pointer carried that stage discipline into every later screen role. By the time David Lynch cast her, Pointer was already known for maternal roles with strange emotional undercurrents. In Carrie, she played the on-screen mother of Amy Irving, her real-life daughter, and the two would work together several times. On television, she became familiar to millions as Rebecca Barnes Wentworth on Dallas. In Blue Velvet, her role was smaller but important. She was part of the clean family surface that made Lumberton's hidden corruption feel so disturbing. Her private life carried love and loss. Jules Irving died in 1979, and her second husband, Robert Simons, died in 2007. In her final years, Pointer lived quietly in Connecticut. She died peacefully in her sleep on April 28, 2025, at an assisted living facility in Ridgefield, just weeks before her 101st birthday. By 2026, Priscilla Pointer's future belongs to legacy theatre family, and the small screen moments where her calm made fear feel closer. Frances Bay as Aunt Barbara. Frances Bay turned a tiny corner of Blue Velvet into something oddly tender. As Aunt Barbara, Jeffrey Beaumont's slightly confused, soft-spoken relative, she brought a flicker of gentle comedy into a film filled with severed ears, gas masks, and hidden terror. She was not central to the plot, yet her presence mattered. She made the Beaumont home feel ordinary, fragile, and strangely human. Born Frances Evelyn Goffman on January 23, 1919 in Manville, Alberta, Canada, Bay came from a Ukrainian Jewish immigrant family and began performing long before Hollywood knew her face. She worked in radio in Canada during the 1930s, then stepped away from acting after marrying Charles Irwin Bay in 1946. For decades, she lived a quieter domestic life, before returning to performance later than most actresses would dare. That late return became her unlikely second beginning. By the time David Lynch cast her in Blue Velvet Bay, had already become a master of small, eccentric roles. Lynch would later bring her into Wild at Heart and Twin Peaks, while mainstream audiences came to love her as Adam Sandler's grandmother in Happy Gilmore, and the unforgettable Marble Rye Lady on Seinfeld. In 2008, she was inducted into Canada's Walk of Fame. Helped by a petition and letters from admirers including David Lynch, Jerry Seinfeld, and Adam Sandler. Her life also carried quiet heartbreak. Her only son Eli died at 23. In 2002, the same year her husband died, Bay was hit by a car in Glendale and lost part of her right leg. Still, she continued acting. She died on September 15, 2011 at 92 from complications of pneumonia. By 2026, Frances Bay remains proof that even the smallest roles can leave a warm, unforgettable shadow. What made this cast unforgettable was not only talent, but the way their real lives seemed to mirror the film's secret beauty on the surface damage in the walls. Maybe the most disturbing thing about Blue Velvet is that its nightmare did not end when the credits rolled. Which story hit you the hardest, and after knowing what happened to them? Does that severed ear now feel less like a clue and more like a warning?